Excellent. Start now?
Yes.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. We're going to kick off the day today with a topic that is probably more relevant today than it has been in the last decade, and that is pivotal leadership. So what is pivotal leadership? There's a lot of different definitions, but there's a few consistent defining factors. Pivotal leadership is all about having a clear vision. It's about shaping and communicating core values of your brand. And pivotal leaders also all have positive attitudes and tend to show appreciation for the team. So I'm stating the obvious here, but the past 6 months have put all leaders to the test in a way that probably has not been done since the end of World War II. That's the situation we find ourselves in now. And there are a few, characteristics that leaders today need to exhibit. And organizational psychologists all kind of rally around these few things. One is vigilance, which really just means you are present in the moment and you're alert to what is happening around you. Pattern recognition, that just means being able to make sense of what you're seeing and go beyond assumptions, not jumping to conclusions, but addressing the right things. Mental rehearsal is really about being able to reflect and being able to visualize and prepare you for tough challenges. And then finally, pivotal leadership is all about response readiness. How do you build on the skill set required to take on challenges? If you think about what we all encountered at the beginning of March, were you ready to pivot and make those changes quickly to ensure the long-term sustainability of your business? So that is what we're going to be talking today. And with that said, I'd like to introduce you to our esteemed panel. First off, in the top left-hand corner, we have Dane Aloe. Dane is the Director of Growth and Innovation for Accenture. In this role, Dane works with clients across industries to identify, launch, and scale new businesses, ventures, and sources of revenue. And before joining Accenture, Dane co-founded, scaled, and sold Content, one of the fastest growing customer analytics and content marketing companies in North America. Welcome, Dane.
Thank you.
Next, we have Brandi Leifso. She is the CEO and founder of Evio Beauty Group, which is a portfolio of cosmetics and skincare products that redefine luxury beauty to be kind and conscious and affordable. And at the age of 21, Brandi was living in a women's shelter where she founded the concept for Evio Beauty. And from humble beginnings, Brandi successfully established relationships with some of the world's largest retailers. So Brandi, welcome to the group. That's quite an introduction. Cynthia Wong is AVP of Digital Product Management at Canadian Tire Corporation. Cynthia is a leader in digital product management with deep experience in telco and retail, and she has been a driver of organizational transformation in order to adapt the evolving needs of being of living and working through digital. And through customer obsession and the desire to build high-performing teams, she's launched many large-scale initiatives, digital replatforming ventures, and numerous complex online capabilities. Welcome, Cynthia. And then last but not least, we have Feras Zikra, who is the CEO of Karl Winters. He is Karl Winters is an innovative scent branding firm based in Montreal. He's also a member of the council at the University Club of Montreal. A McGill graduate, Karl commenced his marketing career with Omnicom Group in New York. And then in 2013, he founded Karl Winters with an emphasis on design and fragrance. Pre-pandemic, the business developed private label merchandise to hotel and retail brands such as the Ritz-Carlton, Fairmont, and Maison Burks. So I'm sure you can understand how all of these businesses would have been impacted by COVID. And with that said, let's dig in. So I have some questions. I'm just going to field them to the panel and you guys can jump in. The first one. So obviously we've all had to deal with the realities of COVID to some degree or another. And I think it's fair to say that no business has escaped some level of turmoil and some level of change. So with that said, I would love to know how your individual businesses, all being so diverse, how did they change during COVID? And maybe I'll just kick it off and hand it over to Cynthia to give us perspective on Canadian Tire.
Sure. So I'm sure all of you will hear stories about how COVID, threw wrenches at our plans, capital buckets out the window, repurposing. I think for Canadian Tire, I don't know if you guys are follow our website or come to our site for shopping, but our site, if you don't know, was hard down for almost 10 days in April. We were splashed. So customers came to our site and it was like, you know, thank you for coming to us. Here's a phone number. Please call the store and place a phone number or a phone order. So it's kind of like your worst nightmare as somebody in digital and in e-com when your site is just hard down. So it was, you know, Herculean efforts to get everybody rallied around fixing the site. Ultimately, the problem was magnitude of orders. When the stores shut down and everybody was coming to digital, our site just couldn't handle it. And so we've obviously learned a lot. We've done a lot of improvements to the site, and we're hopefully ready for this coming peak and the Cyber and Christmas holiday. But I think one of the biggest lessons for us was, you know, we need to focus on stability. We also need to move very quickly. So we were kind of in a world where we were doing releases, you know, every once in a while. And during COVID, it was like every night, every 2 days, people on the phone till midnight, like what's going in tonight? What are we going to do to make sure that we have stability on the site? So other than some of the calamity, I'd say during that peak period, there's also been quite a bit of like long-standing change that's happened. Probably for anybody that has a digital presence, digital share has grown. So, you know, if we were doing so much sales online before, it's definitely, you know, growing gangbusters. And if stores close again, we will be in that state again. For us, we also have Sport Check and Marks as banners. And for Sport Check, because they are not an essential service, all of the stores across the country were closed. And so it was a proud moment to say that our digital penetration was 100%, but behind the scenes, there was a lot of scrambling happening. So things like making sure that we're able to kind of match a higher penetration rate. And then I think the other thing is just meeting the changing customer needs. Everybody is doing things like curbside pickup now, making it easier for customers to get the products they're looking for quickly, but also safely.
Awesome, thank you. Let's switch gears a little bit, and maybe Brandi, you could take us through what changed in your business being primarily digital to begin with.
Yeah, so we made a bold move in 2018. We made the choice to pull out of every retail. So previously we were 100%, or I'd say close to 100%, probably 95% in wholesale, and we wholesaled our product. I decided to discontinue that line and reestablish and build an entire new business, really, essentially, that was all direct to consumer. And that business launched in March of 2019. So we've really kind of had a year before a lot of other people in the space to kind of establish, although it's changed a lot, to echo a lot of Cynthia's comments, the needs of the consumers have changed. But luckily, we really had that year period almost to the day to establish our direct-to-consumer funnels and lines and back-end operations. So that was really fortunate. And we also, a big reason why we went to direct-to-consumer was because we wanted that ongoing communication directly with the person whom was purchasing, so that we could build a community, have that feedback loop more frequently, and be able to pivot things quickly. Luckily, we're a lot smaller, so we're able, that's part of the benefits of being a startup, is to be able to pivot quickly to customer feedback. So we had already started those feedback loops, and had a huge community around us that became used to giving us their feedback. So that's something that we were really fortunate that I don't want to say we came out unscathed, because we certainly did not. The biggest changes that happened for us was within manufacturing. So when manufacturing shuts down, a really big part of us reaching new consumers and being top of funnel, which has become more important to kind of look at those digital funnels, especially now with the digital space being more competitive, is having to have, constantly new people come in a very competitive space like cosmetics. So a big part of that for us is sampling. And sampling is all about mass and quantity with partners like BoxyCharm, Ipsy, FabFitFun. And so those are huge volumes. As soon as our manufacturers shut down, we were unsure whether we would be able to meet the demands of our sampling box partners, in which we already had a ton of POs in the queue, and it's something that we rely on heavily. So that was the biggest adjustment for us, is having to try to just be really fluid on what our manufacturing capacities were going to be. That was probably the biggest challenge within this experience for us. And then the added competitive nature of all of our competitors going online now as well, in already a very loud, content-full space.
Right, that's fascinating, thank you. And so that just kind of naturally brings me to Feras, given that your business was targeting hotels, and I can't think of another sector outside of tourism and airlines that have been impacted so severely. So what did you do, and what changes did you encounter?
Correct, Robin. Thank you. And yeah, it's the hotel industry was really hard hit with the pandemic. And just as you were introducing Karl Winters, you know, we, just to put things in context, our business is primarily B2B, you know, delivering the expertise to hotels and retailers to develop branded merchandise like scented candles and diffusers. You know, it goes in sync with a multi-sensory program. So that includes scent, music, design that really helps in brand differentiation and delivering that memorable guest experience. So in March 2020, when the news came that there was going to be a partial lockdown across Canada, the US, and many countries around the world, um, you know, the travel was limited, came to a complete halt. So the onset of the pandemic really brought the unfortunate closure of the hotels in most of countries around the world. And what was a booming travel industry where people enjoyed traveling, and whether it was for business and pleasure, was brought to a screeching halt. So from a Karl Winters perspective, we felt that right away, because projects that we had locally and internationally were put on hold or canceled. Um, Obviously, you know, looking at this back in March, you know, the lockdown to me was considering that to be an indefinite period of time. You know, I had to make some quick decisions as far as how we want to proceed forward with the business. And there was some encouraging news coming towards April that, you know, e-commerce services like Amazon were providing an invaluable service to people at home. My wife spent more and more time shopping online, getting the things that we needed, as opposed to going to the grocery store or hardware stores. So it looked like e-commerce was a strategy that was being adopted by consumers and people around the world. And naturally, from that made the assessment that perhaps moving or transitioning to a direct-to-consumer e-commerce model would be a natural choice to get into. However, it's you know, that requested a lot of effort from our team, an investment in new product development. But the news started coming in, like when you look at global retailer like Net-a-Porter, which is an online destination for premium fashion brands based in London. According to Vogue, I read the article that there was a substantial increase in their online sales in the houseware category. So, and candles really accounted for quite a bit of that increase. So I felt encouraged to press forward and really rallied the team that I have, the creative team, which is quite a few freelancers, designers, package designers, as well as our perfumers, which are based in France, to come up with a strategy on how we want to develop a new collection of candles. What would be our value proposition? And it was at one point we you know, the investment necessary to get to that point was being questioned, because, you know, would we be able to deliver the product and differentiate ourselves according to some of the different brands that are out there? But I'm pleased to say that we worked with our perfumer to develop 4 unique fragrances, art-inspired collection of candles that we can position through the Karl Winters website. And we're at a point right now in our journey where we're going to be offering the collection before the holiday season. So a lot of work to get to that point and a lot of unknowns. But I guess for us, it was about kind of reading the different opportunities and messages that are coming out through the pandemic. And like Brandi was saying, I mean, D2C e-commerce is the way we chose to press forward with.
That's great. Thank you. And I've got a couple thoughts, but I'll hold them until the end because I'm sensing a theme
Sure.
already.
Love to hear it.
Dane, you're in a completely different category that I feel that I can probably relate to most closely in terms of my day-to-day. So what were the changes with Accenture?
Yeah, so we had two kind of major pivots happening at the same time. One was, making sure our staff, and we have 500,000 people around the world, making sure our staff had the tools and the technology and ability to continue to work. And we're the largest user of Teams globally, and we had been that way for a couple years. So in a way, we were positioned well to pivot. So I'd say 80% of our people were comfortable. We're used to working at client side or in hotel rooms or backs of Ubers as we're on the go. So, a lot of our own people were comfortable with that, but we haven't had to adopt some collaboration tools for workshops and things that we just can't do in person anymore. But that was day one of the pivot. Yeah. And day two, we had clients calling and saying, I have 50,000 employees. What do I do? How can I help get everyone working effectively and digitally? So we actually became a huge kind of overnight, a huge help to clients that just needed to get people to work remotely. And kind of one example of that's real to a lot of Canadians is we were aware of the financial relief that the government's various levels had announced for people, but they had no way of actually organizing, auditing, administering this financial relief. So we actually worked with the ESDC branch of the Canadian government to set up all the digital systems and call centers to allow for Canadians to call and get financial relief. So in 4 days, we basically stood up a call center with 2,600 agents, 25 different languages, and they still field about 40,000 calls a day for Canadians with financial questions and on loans and payback. So we had to kind of invent new programs with our clients. So that's kind of one real example of not just us having to pivot our own people, but we had to create new services kind of on the go to help our clients.
That's awesome. Thank you for that rounded out perspective. So I want to change course a little bit and think about you personally as leaders within your own organizations, how you personally adapted to COVID. Did it change your perception of how you lead your teams? And are there any learnings that you think you'll take forward to future challenges, be it at this scale, hopefully not, or smaller? And maybe Dane, we'll just keep going with you and interested to hear because your challenge is quite unique.
Yeah, well, I for me, it was making sure like our teams and our people didn't feel pressure and that they felt safe. So we immediately kind of shut down all our offices. And I believe globally, everyone's work from home. So people can, work from where they want, make sure they have the technology they needed. They need to look after their kids and pick up, feed the dog. And we're used to that now. And that's just, in a way, it brings a little bit more humanity to how we work. And I think for me personally, what I was able to show is like showing more vulnerability and being more open with like, we don't know what's going on and we don't know what this will look like. Really kind of as much as we're digital and like farther apart, we brought our teams closer together. So I think the vulnerability and honesty kind of will help as we go forward. And I don't see that going the other way and back to kind of suit and ties. And I just don't see it that way anymore.
Brandi, what about you?
I would mimic that in a lot of ways on a much different scale. We already had about half of our team was remote. When I originally founded Evio, I lived in Vancouver and then moved to Toronto, but we still continue to work with our Vancouver team. And then also simultaneously, some people that work for us here at Evio HQ at our downtown Toronto office ended up moving to Vancouver. So then they work together in Vancouver. So we were already set up for remote work, luckily. And so not a lot changed in terms of the way that we were interacting with the team, other than, of course, everybody working at Evio HQ in Toronto, we're now working remotely. But we were still using the exact same systems. We use Basecamp. We really like Basecamp. So all of our communications and such and file sharings, all of those things, not much changed in terms of our processes. But from a personal perspective too, I always led with a lot of vulnerability and transparency. I feel like the nature of my company starting from where it did, people have kind of always known some of my darkest moments, so that vulnerability is out of the way. So might as well continue leading with that. And I think there's a lot of power in vulnerability too. I think some of the companies that we're seeing come out ahead right now is because their leaders have been able to be really vulnerable, transparent, and give a sense of security to their teams in a time that seems very uncertain. And being able to just be really vulnerable, and to Dane's point, say, you know, we don't know what's going to happen, but we're in this together, and these are the things that we're going to do in the time that we don't know what's going on, and be transparent and have more conversations around it. That's been a really big thing for me. Like I said, I've always led with that kind of vulnerability, but even more so now, down to transparency of little wins, celebrating things a little bit differently because it has to be virtual, but making sure that we're still taking the time to celebrate those little things, because I think that's just as important during dark, uncertain times too. So yeah, I think that, and another really big thing is that I'm the travel industry. So speaking to Feras as well, mentioning about how the travel industry is shut down, as much as that's changed industries, it's also changed the way we do business. So that's been a really big thing as a leader, because I used to travel 3 weeks out of the month. And so the team was also used to not having me around, and we all kind of liked it that way because I was in my element while traveling. I loved meeting new people. I loved being in new spaces, and it inspired me to create. And that's actually been probably the hardest thing, is that without that travel, without that connection, I haven't felt very inspired to create, to be really transparent and open about that. And so that's been a good thing in some ways, because it's forced us to actually bring our team together, and to Cynthia's point, create more stability also within that, because we never know what's going to happen, but now we know that, okay, if there's ever a situation that something happens to me, I can't create, and really I'm the vision of the company, we now have this system in place for, okay, how can we lean on other people's creativity? Everybody takes that creates it in different ways. So it's made us a stronger team to really understand each other's different strengths and weaknesses and lean on those more so. But also definitely a downside from not being able to travel, not being able to have some of those experiences that make Evio what it is. So yeah, I think that answers the question in terms of how we've changed as leaders. Yeah.
You said one thing that I've written down, because it really speaks to me, is that what you've learned, and I think we can all probably relate to this, is that the power of vulnerability. And Dane, to your point as well, I think we all feel a little bit more free to show our true selves, whereas before, you know, you wear your mask, which is a suit, in every day, and now, you know, if somebody's kid runs naked behind you right now, I don't think anybody's going to be surprised. So that better not happen, because I'm in an office environment, so present company excluded. Cynthia, what learnings did you take forward, or will you take forward for future challenges?
So it's funny, I was actually on a call yesterday, and somebody's child did come running across the screen naked. So it is part of our day-to-day. I would absolutely echo what both Dane and Brandi have said. I think, you know, being authentic has definitely been one of the skills that we've had to really lean on as leaders. I think when we were in the office, everybody could kind of leave their personal life at home, come in the office and, you know, have your persona there. But now that you're working from home, your family is around you, surrounding you. So you have, you know, team members with very young children that are at home that can't read, because they're so young and they really need to be hands-on. You've got folks with, you know, elderly parents in retirement or nursing homes that are just dealing with the risk and the fear of the actual virus potentially becoming an outbreak. And then you've got other folks that are maybe younger, but they're dealing with isolation, right? They're used to very social life, and now they're at home alone trying to figure out, you know, should I buy a dog? Should I get some plants? And not to belittle it, but you know, there's honestly a lot of different situations now that you're dealing with, and they're closer to you because they're affecting work. So again, I think being authentic, being vulnerable, sharing the experiences that I was having with my team so that they all know we're in this together. And I think as a result of that, one of the things that we tried to do with my team was, you know, what are some of the new norms that we're going to establish? Like, you know, let's as much as it's not like this is a 9-to-5 job, but we really do need boundaries now, right? So for different individuals, maybe 9-to-5 doesn't work because they have to be with their kid during the day. So actually, you know, Cynthia, I'm going to work off hours a little bit more, and to just try to manage my time. So establishing norms, you know, meeting etiquette, make sure that when you're working with somebody and you're pulling them into a conversation that you're maximizing your time with them, and that there's a meaning behind it, and that we're not wasting people's time. So there was kind of grassroots around that, and then eventually became more of a movement with our senior exec teams, establishing some of these new working norms, which has been fantastic. I think the other thing that everybody's talked about as well is just communication and transparency. Because things were changing on a daily basis, we almost had the need to meet more often as a team. So we would do like a 15-minute check-in at the middle of the day, like what's happening in our stores, what's happening with the transportation network, what's happening personally, what's happening at the leadership level, what do we all need to do for today, because tomorrow it's going to be a whole new day. So just like deeper communication, more cross-functional collaborative communication. So yeah, I think it's changed our world for sure. I think one of the really great things that has come out of this though is we've talked about collaboration tools. They've really made it easy to work, but we've discovered a few new tools as well. Like whiteboarding was one of those things that I personally love doing, and it's hard to do digitally. There are some really great tools out there. But one of the things that this has done is it has created a more level playing field, I think, for companies that have distributed organizations. So Accenture, Brandi, you're dealing with it as well in terms of people in different geographical areas. And it was always kind of like, you know, Toronto was the hub of Canadian Tire. And so we would have a meeting and a few folks dialing in. And for those people, it was probably always challenging because they're not seeing the faces, they're not seeing whatever we're drawing on the board unless we tilt the camera. So one of the great things that I think has come out of this is, you know, my team members that are in Calgary now, we're all on an equal playing field in terms of the communication and understanding exactly what's happening within the conversation.
That's great. Thank you for that. And Feras, what's your perspective on this? What are you taking forward, or how did you personally adapt?
Well, I feel like a lot of the different approaches have been talked about. Cynthia, Brandi, you know, as a new business, startup business, we all encounter in our daily lives challenges, and you know, we're really, you know, get up in the morning and figuring out how we can, you know, work around the challenges or how we can develop solutions. What was unique about this situation really is the pandemic was really thrown upon us. It wasn't something that we asked for. Not something that we can control, really out of our scope. However, what I've learned is really there are certain things that I as a person can control. There are other things that are really out of my scope. So, you know, just look into other support groups out there within my community that are going through similar circumstances, and, you know, asking questions on what they're doing and how they're responding with their team and how they're keeping their team safe, and how they're, you know, staying, you know, every day, you know, the gyms are closed, you know, you can't really travel anymore. So what kind of things are they adopting? So it's the supportive group for me has been very, very important. And, you know, just to kind of wrap up here, like disruption has always been around us, right? And it's from the get-go. By looking at what the pandemic, you saw the entrepreneurial spirit in a lot of fashion brands kind of pivoting really quick into making masks. And, you know, in our industry, like perfumery, companies in perfume manufacturing of perfumes, you know, pivoting into making hand sanitizers. So in restaurants, you know, that were forced to shut down, kind of moving into the takeout menu. So it's really about being nimble and looking for the support groups from my experience, Robin.
Yeah, being nimble is a great point. And if we look at the retail sector as an example, obviously it's clear that digital transformation now is the time if you haven't arrived there before. So I'm curious because we've seen the carnage that is happening and continues to happen in this sector. And do you guys think that stores are just about buying now, or do you think they are places to experience the brand? Do you think that within your own brands that your digital transformation is done, or do you think you're going to continue along this path? And maybe Feras, we'll just start with you to continue.
Thank you, Robin. I'll just add to that based on my experience, I mean, when we walk today into the Apple store in the mall, and it's really a fascinating experience about, learning about or experiencing the brand physically, and interacting with their customer agents, and who can deliver that expertise around the new technology. It's really, I think that's post-pandemic, I think that probably would be the direction that physical stores would want to consider in the future as a way to experience the brand, because a lot of discussion pre-pandemic was whether or not e-commerce was something sustainable. But we've learned today, I mean, just by looking at through the pandemic, that a lot of businesses have pivoted directly into e-commerce and delivering their products online to their customers. So it does work and it is sustainable. So that would be my take on all of this, Robin.
Cynthia, what about you? Are stores just a place to buy, or are they a place to experience the brand? And what do you think the future is for Canadian Tire? And Brandi, I see your hand raised. We're going to come to you next.
So for Canadian Tires, the stores really are the heart of what we do. We have, for Canadian Tire, there's 500 stores nationwide. I think Sport Chek has about 200. Especially with Canadian Tire, we have Canadian Tire locations in the smallest communities, in the most remote areas of Canada. And there really is kind of this localized feel. So our dealers, who are the ones that drive these, that own the stores, they do a lot within their communities. So they have, fundraising, whether it's for Jumpstart or something more local. So absolutely, I think the stores are still going to remain a pivotal part of our strategy, especially as we think about, like I said, earlier, pivoting to things like curbside. You can't really beat a 2-hour turnaround window. I know, Amazon has deep roots and is getting better and faster at delivering stuff, but at least in Canada, yet they don't have a physical presence outside of the Whole Foods stores. So it is kind of a competitive lead for us, at least for the time being. And it is, even if you visit our website for Canadian Tire, the first thing is there's a store chosen for you. So the store really is at the heart of much of what we do, and will continue to be part of that strategy.
Right, I hope so.
Yeah.
Brandi, over to you.
You have me and April the pug here now. Yeah, so I think that in the cosmetic space, it's been a really interesting transformation for a little bit of time now in regards to retail locations. You have the mammoths like the Sephoras, Sephora was really innovative in their time to be the first ones to have actually open testers where you can come in. It's not a beauty counter situation where it's not someone putting the makeup on you, but you can explore for yourself with open testers. So Sephora really was innovative within that space. And then just in the last couple of years, we've seen Glossier come in and really shake up the beauty space. And they've done it from more an experiential perspective, mainly being digital, but having their pop-ups. And so I think what we're going to see become, and we actually also at Evio, we really banked on this. We thought 2020 was going to be our year of experiential pop-ups. We even specifically hired somebody that was their full-time job, was experiential pop-ups. We hired them in March. Their start date was March 8th of 2020. So, but of course we can't do that. But I do see innovation within the beauty space that will occur within pop-ups specifically, because I don't think people are going to want to take on the high expenditure of rents and having that type of cost over their head, with now these uncertainties that I think is going to last a lifetime. Even if the whole world opens back up, I think people are still going to be a lot more cautious of their physical footprint and a lot more aware of their digital footprint. And so but I do think pop-ups are going to be a big way of the future, and having those pop-ups as an experiential, because we've also recognized that people go to Sephora or go to these stores to test the products, but then go online to read the reviews and then still purchase online. So we've also seen a lot of retailers change their models and interactions with brands to now want a percentage of digital sales. So they're recognizing that even within their stores are a place to experience these products and to touch and feel these products, but the likelihood of that customer actually leaving the store without a purchase and then bringing that purchase back to our own personal digital, where we get all of the 100% margin on it, is a lot more likely. So we already started to see that pivot well before COVID even happened, and it's just happening more aggressively now.
Right. Okay, so I just want to jump into Q&A. We've got a question for Cynthia. Many big and small businesses sell their products on Canadian Tire. What are the visible changes in vendor relationships? And have you seen increased interactions with sellers? How are they coping with the pandemic? Any perspective you can provide on that?
So my focus has been largely on the digital side. So my relationships aren't as close with the actual vendors, but I know that we are, we continue to support multiple different brands. I think one of the challenges that we have had this year is with just out of stocks as well. With, as you think about the wave of the pandemic coming in, first it was boredom busters like trampolines. They were flying like hotcakes, and then it was the backyard pools, and then it was the beard trimmers and everybody doing home haircuts. So I think we continue to have a very wide assortment of products. Like I said earlier, I think we try as much as possible to support local. We also have our own in-house brands as well. So I'm just aware of that piece, but yeah, I think, inventory has been definitely a challenge because these hot items keep, like toilet paper, keeps selling out. We'll probably continue to see that as a trend into the new year, and who knows what winter will bring us as a new hot item or hot sellers. Yeah.
So a question for Brandi. Can you tell us more on how to find and pursue strategic partnerships? Because it seems like Evio is very good at this. So can you shed any light there?
Yeah, thank you so much for the compliment on that too. It's one of my favorite things to do, actually, is strategic partnerships, and it's how we've grown. We're having April be taken away. So it's actually how we've grown Evio. Because of where I started, there was a lot of challenges coming from the shelter, particularly around financing. I didn't have the ability to take out a loan. I didn't have anybody to co-sign. A bank certainly is not even giving you a credit card if you don't have a home address. So there was a lot of those kinds of challenges, and how I overcame those challenges was actually through strategic partners. So we were really fortunate to actually have partner. Our first strategic partnership was actually with our manufacturer. So they're one of the largest they are the largest skincare amenity manufacturer in the world. So they do the hotels predominantly, but they actually invested in us in 2017. And so that was the first strategic partnership that really kind of put us on the map to be able to do a lot more large scale and not worry so much. Our largest cost is manufacturing, not worry so much about those turns and nets, but be able to really establish that partnership. I think that it's incredibly important to find ways to really show your value in a partnership. So to answer the question, I think the most important thing is to really show what your value is within it. Not to see what do I get out of it, but what can I bring to the table? And that's a lot more attractive to anybody who's looking to partner within those scales. And specifically to Aurora Cannabis, I started breadcrumbing cannabis very early. In 2017, I started talking to some of my advisors and investors. So well before legalization, we started to talk to the press, talking about our value set. So again, going back to our morals and values, we kept talking about how can cannabis make us a kinder, more conscious world and create a kind and conscious future, which is our entire morale at Evio, our entire mission. And we were able to eliminate our use of animal byproducts, as well as we were able to reduce our use of plastic by reinforcing our plastics with hemp fibers. And because it's such a heavily regulated ingredient, it was one of the very few regulated ingredients in beauty, which is not a regulated space. Beauty is self-regulated. So in doing so, that added value to our consumer. We started talking to the press about that. And before we knew it, we had every major cannabis company in the world approaching us, because it was prior to legalization, not a lot of people willing to take that risk, and not a lot of people speaking vocally about it. And then you just have to really dedicate yourself to that partnership. So even when we started getting hate mail, really essentially from people who, like, for example, we lost a very large contract within 5 minutes of the press release coming out that we were partially acquired by Aurora Cannabis. It was the first cannabis with a publicly traded company and beauty company. It was the first partnership that had ever been done globally at that time. Within 5 minutes of the press release coming out, we had people pull out of $100,000 contracts saying, given your support of illegal drugs, we don't support you. And I think a big part of having successful partnerships is dedicating yourself to them, knowing that you're doing it because of your value set. Like, how could you ever not want to reduce the use of plastic, animal byproducts, and increase transparency? So I think that dedication to your why is what establishes any partnership, and breadcrumbing is actually what I would say. Always make it their idea, because it gives you an upper hand in contract negotiation as well. So do it for the right reasons, breadcrumb it, make it their idea, is what I would say from strategic partnerships.
Brandi, that's fascinating, and I applaud you for having such a commitment publicly to your values, because I think that as consumers is something that we all are aligned to, is wanting to do business with organizations that have shared values. We have one last question. We have 1 minute to answer it, so I'll put it out there for any of you. As we go towards e-commerce and digitalization, are you also investing in digital channels for customer support versus relying on more traditional models such as call centers? This is actually really interesting and kind of leads into perhaps one of the changes that we'll see going forward. So anybody want to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of speak kind of generally across many different industries, including retails. We're seeing, it's very exciting time to be in all of our industries, because we're seeing 10 years of growth in like 6 months. And we're seeing kind of a Black Friday level of digital traffic and purchasing sustained over 3 months. So I think at first people were just investing in what they could to stay afloat, and really kind of just making sure that you got people through the pipe and purchasing and making sure your deliveries were on time. But now we're seeing, on the ground with clients, the traffic's not going down. It's not going away. And as you're talking to consumers, they're seeing the value of using digital as a front door to their local store. So people still want local, but they're going to do it in a digital way. So I think you're seeing a lot of investment in digital kind of last mile investments, digital chat and AI. So you are seeing that kind of shift of permanent investments in digital, I think.
Right, thank you. I totally agree. If there was a theme for today, for me, it's the old adage that necessity is the mother of invention. And it seems like all of our businesses in very different areas have been hit with that. So, and a couple key takeaways. Cynthia, you mentioned focusing on stability as a priority during the beginning stages of COVID. We talked about how all of us kind of had to gather more empathy. Dane, you mentioned about more empathy as leaders. And then there's, of course, my favorite quote, which is power and vulnerability. I hope we don't lose that as time goes on, because I think it makes us all stronger if we're able to just show that side to us. And finally, I love the point about having to lean on the strength of your team and not being a one-man show. And, you know, if your creative inspiration is lacking or something else is hard to come by, leaning on the strengths of the collective group. So with that said, thank you all for your participation. We are going to go now into our morning break for 15 minutes. So please join us, everyone, at 11:15 for the panel session on the Alpha and Omega session of Omni. Thanks to the panelists, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.